Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 108, Meno 83d to 84a. Now that the slave has seen that doubling the baseline of a square actually quadruples the area, and they're only looking for a square double the area, Socrates has pointed out that the original square was less than what they needed, and quadruple the area on the double baseline is more than they needed. When asked, the slave says, "Yes, it seems to me to be like that. Kalos togarsoi dokun tuto apokrinu." Well said. For what seems to you, answer this. In other words, what seems to you, use this as your answer. Socrates approves of the slave saying what he thinks, or what appears to him. This is something Meno tends not to do. Meno gives the opinions of other people. Kai moi lege, uch hedemen tu oin podoin en, hede tetaron? Nay. And tell me, wasn't this 2 units and this 4? Yes, Socrates is pointing to the baseline, the original one and the double baseline. De ara tentu octopodos choriu gramen, mezzo men enai tes tipodos, elato de tes tetrapodos. De. So it's necessary for the line of the 8 square area to be greater than this 2 unit line, but lesser than the 4 unit line. Yes, it's necessary. Pero de legen peliken tinafes auten enai. Tripoda. Well then, try and say how long you claim it to be. 3 units. As we can see, Socrates has deliberately misled the slave into giving the wrong answer. The double area is 8, but the area built on the 3 unit line will be 9. This is something Socrates will show the slave in a minute. But at the moment, he asks the slave for a number, any number you like, between 2 and 4. And obviously the slave was going to say 3. Did the slave rummage around in his soul to look for this knowledge? No. First of all, it isn't knowledge. This is false. Secondly, he just had to calculate the number between 2 and 4. This is not helping if Socrates is really trying to demonstrate recollection in the way that he's described recollection. Clearly, Socrates isn't demonstrating recollection. He's demonstrating something else, but he hasn't told Meno that he's demonstrating something else. So far as Meno is concerned, the demonstration is still about recollection. All Meno can see is that Socrates isn't teaching the way a sophist would teach, therefore he isn't teaching, therefore the slave must be recollecting. Ukun anper tripus to hemisut autes proslepsometh kai estai tripus, duomen gar hoide hes, kain thende hos autos duomen hode hes, kai gignetai tuto to chorion hofes. Nay. So if it's 3 units, in other words, if what you say is true and the baseline should be 3 units, let's add half of this line and it will be 3 units. Here he evidently points at the 2 unit line and extends it by half as much again to make 3 units. For these are 2 and this is 1. And from there, the same way, these are 2 and this is 1. So he's extended not only the baseline, but the line on the left going up, because the shape we want is a square. So Socrates says, and this area comes to be which you claim. Yes, the slave sees an area. It's the area based on the 3-unit line. Therefore, this must be what they're looking for. The slave isn't all that bright. Uk un an e tede trion, kai tede trion, toholon chorion, trion, tris podon gignetai, vinetai. Therefore, if this side is 3 units and this side is 3, the whole area becomes 3 times 3 squares. So it seems. Did the slave recollect that a square has equal sides? And did he remember that we should multiply one side by the other side to find the area? Or did he simply follow Socrates? Tres de tres posoe si podes ennea. How many feet are 3 times 3? The feet this time are not the units of length of a line, but the small squares making up an area. The slave calculates, and he gets the answer 9. Did he cheat and look into his soul where all knowledge resides, or did he calculate 3 times 3? This is hardly knowledge because it's wrong. That is to say, we are looking for the area of 8 small squares, but we have come to the area with 9 squares. Ede de to diplasion poson enai podon octo. But the double area had to be how many small squares? 8. We could say that the slave recollects that the double area is 8 squares because he has heard that the area is 8, and indeed he has calculated that the area should be 8 earlier in the conversation. We remember, don't we, that Socrates has used the verb recollect when talking to Meno and trying to make him remember what Gorgias said about virtue. Udar apotes tripodospo to octopun chorion gignetai. Deta. So the 8 square area presumably doesn't come from the 3-unit baseline. Not at all. Al apopoias. Peirohe min e pen akribos, kai e me boule arithmen, ala dexon apopoias. Ala maton dio Socrates, egoge uk oida. But from which line? Try to tell me accurately, and if you don't want to count, but show me from which line. But by Zeus, Socrates, I don't know. Now, why does the slave say that he doesn't know? Could it be that he actually doesn't know? He's already offered 2 suggestions, the 4-unit line and the 3-unit line, but they have both turned out to be wrong. How does he know that they are wrong? He has seen the diagram, and he has also helped make the calculations. So why doesn't he just point at another line to be the baseline? Well, the problem is that at the moment there isn't another possible baseline on the diagram. He cannot point at a line which doesn't exist. It's clearly beyond his abilities to make a new line. It doesn't occur to him at all. It wouldn't occur to many people today. Most people who know the answer have learnt the answer from teachers who showed them, just as Meno no doubt knows the answer from a sophist. If the slave now looked inwards into his soul and looked for the new knowledge that he needs, that would be a very good demonstration of recollection. and I hope that we'll see that, possibly in the next episode. At the moment, the slave has run out of answers, he has no answer to offer, and so he is in what is known as aporia, a lack of supply. If we recall, the whole business of recollection has come about because Socrates had to find a way to break the deadlock. Meno was no longer prepared to offer yet another answer about virtue. And Meno had made a virtue out of his vice that he had no further answers. He didn't have any answers to give. He couldn't speak at all, and he went on and on and on about how much he was in aporia. He even made a joke about Socrates looking like a torpedo fish, and he also said that now he would be able to go back home and tell people that what they have all said about Socrates actually happened to him. This is a wonderful thing, that Socrates not only doesn't know himself what virtue is, but he caused Meno not to know what virtue is, which was absolute nonsense. Meno thinks that he does know. He still has the answers Gorgias gave him. It's Socrates who didn't accept them. So we can already make a few comparisons between Meno and his slave. We could make some irrelevant comparisons. For example, Meno is an aristocrat, the slave is a slave. Meno is rich, the slave is poor. Even in terms of virtue, we would have to say that Meno has virtue in that he is well-born, handsome. He has good qualities, but they are all irrelevant when it comes to ethics. The slave, on the other hand, has no virtue. He is the opposite of virtuous. He's vicious in that he is a slave at the opposite end of the social hierarchy. More to the point is the education they have both received. Meno has been taught by sophists, at least Gorgias, while the slave hasn't been taught by sophists, but as we already have seen, he has learned some things from this little exercise with Socrates. He already knows on what line the double area is not based. Not on the 3-unit line, not on the 4-unit line. This is already some knowledge. But how did he learn it? It came from Socrates, but Socrates didn't teach him the way a sophist teaches. How does Socrates do it? Meno doesn't have a clue. It must be recollection.